Greetings, folks. Welcome back to the Jason Damico Show, and we are here live, and we've got a very special guest for you. She was born and raised in Los Angeles, singer, songwriter with a particular inclination to soul, blues, and R&B. She shared the stage with Walter Trout, Sugar Ray Rayford, and Tim Bogart, Dolly Parton as well, and she sang vocals for such artists. You may have heard of them. The Who and Paul Rogers, not crazy huge names. Please welcome to the show my new good friend, Miss Brigitte Purdy.
Hey, how are you doing? Thanks for having me on, Jason.
Of course. How is that LA weather right now?
Well, there's only one word to describe it. It is sticky, sweltering. I'm telling you, actually, that's two words, isn't it? Well, anyways, it's sweltering.
I commend you for sitting outside.
Well, you know what? It's a beautiful day, and why not?
Right.
Why not? I mean, still need to get some vitamin D in our system. So yeah, keeping it healthy.
I'm enjoying the palm trees. I don't really see them that much.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's there you go.
Oh, not here. Let me put it on full screen. Oh, that's great. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into your beginning stages real quick. I had a chance to check out the website and YouTube and some of your work, and I'd love to hear kind of how you got into music. It sounds like you started singing at a fairly early age.
Oh yeah, I was born singing, and I was very, very, very blessed to be able to work with some of the best and legends in the business at a very, very young age. As you had mentioned, my parents always believed in me, and one day my mom was, coming home from work in LA, and she heard about an audition, and she just wrote that number down, and she took me to my first catapult. And if you don't know what a catapult is, that means there's hundreds and hundreds of people attending that audition, and they're all lined up around the block. And it was for the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, which is similar to Broadway in Los Angeles. And I was about 13 years old, and so I made the first cut, and then I made the second cut. And so via that, I was trained by some pretty heavyweight professionals who also instructed many of the performers who were in Chorus Line and Cats and Andrew Lloyd Webber, musical theater. And so that was my beginning. And from there, at a young age, I did red carpet events with Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers. And then later in my late teens, I did shows with background vocals and stuff with Paul Rogers and various people, that kind of stuff. When you are growing up in LA, Hollywood based, we're very blessed and lucky to have many of those artists in our backyard.
Right. What was that like? Singing with Paul. I mean, that's just crazy.
Well, he is definitely a legendary rock star, a class act in all regards.
Yeah.
In all regards. Yes.
I saw Bad Company when they came through. I mean, this was at least 7 years ago, 8 years ago. You know what? Maybe even 10 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And they played an outdoor arena type place called Walnut Creek in North Carolina. And they come out. They start off their set, and he takes the mic stand and throws it up, I mean, at least 25, 30 feet in the air, and catches it without a miss at all. Like, just, I've never seen anything like that before.
Well, that's rock and roll. That's what a lot of the rock and roll artists do. Tina Turner, who is one of my, one of the people that I studied, via YouTube, you can see everybody now and learn
Yeah.
and really, really study them. And she really knows how to work that mic. That was one of the things that, specifically that Ike Turner showed, I know Tina had her own thing going, so I don't want to say that I showed her how to do, but that's one of the things that Tina Turner really knew how to work that mic. And so if you go back on and watch a lot of those YouTube videos, it's the music is powerful, but the showmanship and the show and the presentation and how you put that all together is just amazing. And then the way you serve it all up on a platter for your audience, that's the real deal right there. That's
Yeah.
rock and roll, swinging that mic.
I remember being at a conference a few years ago. Can't remember the guy's name. It's right on the tip of my tongue. He's one of those like celebrity live show coaches. He's worked with Taylor Swift and a few many others as well. And he said this one thing, and it always stuck with me. And I started thinking in these terms a couple of years ago after I heard this. Like basically record your live shows and then turn the sound off.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
And it's just observe. And it's really, really interesting. It's almost like once you do that, you can't really go back from that thought process, because once you do that, there's so much that you pick up on that you need to improve with, or just the dynamic totally changes. That was a big thing for me to hear that, and I think it's the same thing that you're kind of saying. Like, so much of it is, and I've got a musical theater background as well, so I can talk to you on those terms.
You're from a musical theater background as well?
Yeah. So a lot of all the vocal lessons that I had before I really started putting out records, that was all like Broadway, kind of like very.
So staging is so important in the way
Yes.
you stand and your power stance and the way
Yes.
you present yourself and the way you hold your head, and all that is so important. And part of those classes that I took at the Amundsen and Dorothy Chandler Pavilion back in those days when I was 13, that's what they taught us. The choreographers, that's what they specifically taught us. They taught us staging, and they dissected a song with us. And those are some valuable things on how to breathe life into a song, not just staging, but emotion-wise, telling the story and making it real. My dance teacher during that time was Annette Cordona, but maybe some people might know her as Cha-Cha from Greece. So she and her and I connected on so many levels, because she grew up where my father grew up, and so her and I had immediate connection culturally
Right.
within the business, and so she was able to share some personal stories, and she became a great mentor to me.
What's your favorite musical?
Geez, wow. There's so many. It's hard to, I'd have to say West Side Stories.
Yeah.
West Side Stories.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Recently, I think Jersey Boys is, not when I saw it, whenever it was, however many years ago. That's more of a recent show. That was incredible. But yeah, the musical theater thing. Yeah, I remember Greece. I was Kaniki back in long time ago.
I could so totally see you being Kaniki. I can
Uh-huh.
so see you being Kaniki.
And the thing about musical theater, it's so great having that family, because I'm an only child, so that was one of the benefits to me, was being with the cast members and hanging out, and everybody
Sure.
gets really close and bonds, and then the show ends. It's really depressing, but
Oh, you gotta have that cast party.
well, yeah, after the cast party, you know, it's you know how it is. Like some of those productions, you're with these people in and out, day in, day
Night
out
and
for.
day and rehearsal and run throughs and and that last that rehearsal. What is it? The
Tech rehearsal, dress
dress
rehearsal, yeah.
dress rehearsal. And so, all those sort of things really prepare you for really life and rock and roll and, the blues scene and music scene, and being prepared for those things, those stick with you and, in life, really.
Who are some of your major influences?
Oh, just about every female icon. Everything from Aretha to Judy Garland to Julie Andrews to Betty Davis. You know who
Yeah.
Betty Davis is?
Mm-hmm.
To Tina Turner to Shaka Khan. Just Linda Ronstadt. So many. Etta James. So many.
Etta James is one of my favorites.
Yeah, just so many badass women.
Yeah. What about instrumentally? Because I know BB King was a big influence from what I read.
Yeah, BB King was a great influence. I have so many different. I listen to a lot of worldly music too. I wake up in the morning, and lately I've been listening to Bill Withers,
Yeah.
and he's been a great inspiration to me. And
Yeah.
I had the wonderful opportunity of being able to meet him and spend some time with him.
Wow.
Yeah, right before his passing, I had pizza with a wonderful friend of mine, and we had pizza, and he told many beautiful stories about how he grew up and how he wrote some of those beautiful songs.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
Ain't
Um,
No Sunshine was like, I still, depending on the venue, if it's like a dinner crowd, sometimes if you're playing kind of those like more dinner theater-esque shows and things really
mhm.
start rocking later in the night, well, Ain't No Sunshine is like always the perfect song to start with.
Well, I like to really look to certain. Like Bill was really one of the greatest prolific writers.
Yeah.
And so going back and really listening and not necessarily, um, sort of dissecting his songwriting process and what he wrote about, and a good song will stand the test of time, and that is why now his song "Lean on Me" is really still, or "Lovely Day."
Yeah.
Those sorts of things, people can still go back and they can find comfort in those songs because they apply to everybody.
For sure.
They apply to the masses. They're things that we feel on a daily basis. So regardless of social economic status, ethnicity, no matter who you are, strip you all down and those songs still will touch your heart.
Well,
So,
speaking of songs, you've made recently a transition from uh, mostly providing vocals on stage, but now you've got a lot of new things in the works over the last few years. Love to
yeah.
hear about kind of how that transition happened for you.
You know, I really wasn't, I took a very long break from music and I really was not going to be coming back. A friend of mine had invited me to a jam, and I had put him off for 3 years. I said, "No,
Right.
good. I'm good." He's like, "Well, come on. We'd really love to have you out." I said, "No, I'm retired. I don't do that anymore." Because remember, I started so very young. I mean, the first time I set foot on stage, I was 5 years old. And so, and I was already working professionally really by 9 and 13 and everything. So,
Yeah.
so, being in the business, and it's not the music that left a bitter taste. It was, I've always had a love, music has always been my true love, but it's the business that can really rake you through the coals. And so anyways, 3 years later, I decided to go to the jam, got bit by the bug,
Yeah.
and so I became Walter Trout was sick during that time, and he was having a liver transplant. I believe it was liver transplant, and so the band was not working. And so my friend who invited me to the jam was Walter Trout's drummer. His name is Michael Leisure. And so during that time period, the band was not working, and so these monster musicians would get together, and they were called Three Fat Guys and Some Punks. And so they were playing at this dive bar, and so they asked me to come down, and I was their tip girl. So they'd play, and the place would be packed because these were like, whoa, these were some really heavy hitters. It was like, oh, they're playing tonight. I mean, these are
Yeah.
people, you know, um, Michael was on drums and he played for Walter. Drake Shining was on keys and he had played for Joe Sample. He has played for Etta James, and now plays for Sugar Ray Rayford. On bass was Jamie Hunting, and he's played for Roger Daltrey, Van Halen, and the list goes on. And then
Wow.
Frank Symes was the musical director for The Who. And so the place was packed.
Right.
And so then they'd play, and then they'd call me up, and I'd sing a song. And after I sang a song, I was their tip girl, and I'd walk around, with the tip jar, and I'd make them an extra $350 just in tips. Right? And so one day I had this really bad migraine, and I thought, oh gosh, I really don't want to go. But, I thought, well, if you don't go, the guys aren't going to make any money. And, you know, they're not going to make very much money. So you really need to go because, you're the tip girl. And so I did go. And that night that I went from the jam to being the tip girl. So from being the tip girl, this is what happened. That night, a magazine was there, and they came to interview my friend Mikey. I call him Mikey. They came to interview Mikey, and they videotaped me. And they asked Mike, who is that girl? Who was she? Oh, that's just my friend Brigitte. No, like, who is she? She's got to be somebody. Who is she? I'm just, saying, I'm just telling the story here. So
she's got to be somebody more than the tip girl.
She's
more than the tip girl.
Friend Bridget. So anyways, they called me up, and Casey Reagan of Music You Can See, they asked me to be in the magazine, Blues top 25 women in blues.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. You deserve to be there, but just the spontaneity of that, like, that's awesome.
Yeah. So Casey says, it's like the whole Hollywood thing. Hello, is this Bridget? Yeah, this is her. I need your bio. I need your website. I need your videos. I need a long list, and I'm writing it down. You got all that? And I said, yeah, I'll get it to you. I had nothing. I had
Yeah.
not one of those things. I remember I was just at the jam, and then I became the tip girl,
Right.
and I was never going to come back to music. So with that, I decided I BB King had passed, and then I wrote the song as a tribute to BB King entitled Lucille, Don't You Weep.
Yeah.
And I put that out via Bluesy News, the magazine that had put me in the top 25 women in blues. And day one on social media, it had over 11,000 views and 500 shares
Wow.
in one day. And so from there, the song went international. And then I wrote a small EP. I said, well, maybe I should write more music. I wrote I wrote an EP, and then from the EP, I wrote my first album entitled Still I Rise. Still I Rise made the first round of voting for a Grammy nomination. However, it did not receive the nomination, but I think to even make the first rounds was pretty doggone good for the for the girl that went from the jam to the tip girl to the top 25 women in blues. Then, and then Walter had heard me on the radio, and he asked me to come sit in. Walter Trout had asked me to come sit in with him um, at one of his concerts. So
That's great. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
What vocally over the years, have you changed anything as far as mechanically? Because I know um singing, like for just me when I was a teenager, it's different than in my 20s. I was curious if you ever ran into any uh
Well,
bumps in
you
the
know,
road, so to speak.
good technique is good technique. So you always want to go back to what is good technique because we are not like with all respect to musicians, guitarists can always change a string, but your instrument, it's very important to take good care of your instrument
Yeah.
and practice good technique. There's little tricks of doing things and making you know um, a very sweet sound, making something a little more you know gritty and dirty, and so knowing how to do those things properly are always a great thing. I would think that my voice, when I was 13, 16, was very much more pristine. But however, the voice that I have now um, is one that is lived a life and a plethora of experiences. And those experiences have brought a lot of emotions that are very real.
Yeah.
So that person at 16 was a very pretty it was a very pretty voice. However, pretty is pretty. But when you can touch somebody's soul, it speaks volumes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think it's Miles Davis that said, to play a wrong note is insignificant, but to play without passion is a crime. Now I'm paraphrasing, and might not might have been not Miles Davis, but it's something to that effect. So
Yeah. I remember
mhm,
hearing that before. I don't know if it's Miles Davis, but I know that quote.
mhm.
I don't know. I can't remember who exactly it was. Um, but while we're on this
Yeah.
creative process for you,
Mhm.
what does that look like?
Well, the creative process is, I really try to obey the inner creative muse within myself. I know that, there's lots of things that spark my creativity. Um, life, art depicts life, and life is my canvas, so to speak. There are things that inspire me, and I say, "Ooh, I have to write that down."
Right.
Lots of things, I tend to be a social learner. I learn through speaking to people and friends, and so maybe after a conversation, I'd say, "Oh, I really like that topic that we were talking about. I think that would make a great song." Those
Right.
sorts of things. So, lots of times people think that maybe that song was about me, but it's not necessarily something that I wrote about me. It could have been about a friend. It could have been something that I watched on TV. I mean, art depicts life, something that's interesting, something that's different, something that's peculiar, you know.
I checked out Rise Like the Water,
Hmm.
and that was jamming. That was
Yeah,
that was awesome. What how did you write that?
I wrote that with Dave Osty, and Dave Osty and I are just, he is a phenomenal writer. So and when you have the ability, or I should say, able to collaborate with somebody, it can be a beautiful thing, and it's a give and take, you know, and so things can manifest and be even greater than you had anticipated if people can just kind of let go of the ego. That's another great musical quote. As a blues artist, I think it's Luther Allison. I'm maybe off today a little bit on who saying who, but the point is, it's meaningful information. Let go of the ego and just play the music.
Yeah.
Just let go of the ego and just let the music create itself, because music was here before we were even born, because we are just really imitators of the music. The birds were singing before we got here.
Right.
Yeah,
It's a great way to look at it.
yeah.
Where does faith play into your singing and creative? You know, you can get as personal or as little personal as you want. But I was just curious because you seem kind of like that ethereal uh, s- spirit.
Well, I have a lot of faith. I'm a believer and lover of God and the Lord. And I study a lot of different spiritual things. Um, I just recently started meditating, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And during this time that I've been encapsulated, it's been a great time to dig deeper and grow more spiritually. Um, that's been helping me get through this little time period. To each their own. I feel really strongly that I'm here to love people and not judge people, and
Right.
everybody has their own journey and their own path. And but I do want to say that I did write a song. I have 3 children, and I did write a song entitled "Be the Light," and it's on my Still I Rise album. And I thought to myself, what would I want to tell my kids if I left this earth? What would be the last thing? Because I didn't know if I was going to write another album. I didn't know. So I thought, well, you know what? And I didn't know my first album, really. I didn't know. I didn't know if it was going to go over. I just
Mm.
I was in the mode of creating music. I wasn't worried about people liking it.
Right.
I was in the mode of creating. And
Right.
I still, being in that mode of creation rather than the ego or the stress or the fear of worrying if people are, what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I wrote the song "Be the Light" for my kids, and it was great because my son was in the studio, and when we released it, it was playing on the radio, and it was so cute because he was singing along with it, and that was such a beautiful
That's amazing.
yeah.
I read, yeah, I was going to bring that up. I read that somewhere. Can't remember
Uh-huh.
exactly where, but being a mother of three, and how
Mhm.
that has it's had to have been somewhat of a juggling act with the
Well,
music
yeah,
industry.
life is a juggling act. Life is a juggling act with kids, without kids, especially in the music industry, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best and worst gig experiences for you, without naming any names if you don't want to.
Oh, uh, well, they happen. I mean, they happen. Unfortunately, we would like to hope that everybody can be on the up and up,
Right.
but, not everybody is. And so that's part of the reason why I had decided to leave the music industry in the first place.
Right.
So, and
But now
that's
you're
where
back.
I try to really stay in the positive zone. I really, really do. And, I really try not to even now even speak words of negativity into the air anymore. I really, really do.
Any memorable gigs in the career, really great, moments?
Well, last year I was in Colorado and in this little town of Nayut, and it was packed. It was packed. It was by the railroad tracks, and it was in the summer, and it started to rain, and everybody was dancing. Everybody was up.
Wow.
Everybody was dancing in the rain, and the groove was just right on, and it just seemed like we were all connected in the music as one, and that was beautiful.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
So, future plans for you, uh, I ask everybody this question, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier before we went live.
Mhm.
Uh, Nobody really knows what's happening next. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I have my new album, Mother of the Crossroads, and just kind of taking my time and seeing what the future holds, and am going to release that. I've already released one single entitled Blues Colored Woman, and that when I released it, it received an LA Critics Award, excuse me. It received an LA Critics Award,
Cool.
um, yeah, for best new single, and so that was wonderful. And I wrote that song about I went to this wonderful red carpet event for songwriters in Hollywood, and I had about 15 minutes to get ready, and yeah, and so I had myself a little pity party, and that felt just like a mess, and decided to go, fix myself in the bathroom, fix my hair, fix my lipstick. And this little lady had handed me a towel to dry my hands afterwards. And I thought to myself, how dare you behave this way when you get to wear the pretty dress and she gets to hand you the towel. So I wrote that song, Blues Colored Woman, for all the people who wake up every day are in survival mode, just trying to make it. And I wrote it about a blues collar, about a woman, but it really, in actuality, is just about everybody who's in survival mode. And I think right now, we're all pretty much in survival mode.
I'll have to listen to that. That's really interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I've got a fun little thing I do at the end of each
Okay.
interview, and it's just the shootout round, which is basically I'll say a word that's
Okay.
industry related to the guest, and you just say a word or phrase back at,
Okay.
just kind of like first thing that comes to mind. And it's
All
judgment
right.
free. It's whatever,
Okay.
no right or wrong.
Hmm.
Blues.
Woman.
It's cool. Rock.
On.
Jazz.
Baby. Jazz, baby. Jazz, baby.
Piano.
Oh, piano man. Piano man.
Yeah.
Yeah, piano man. Well, it could be a piano woman too, but.
Guitar.
Shred.
Yeah. Drums.
Loud. They're loud. There's no knob on them. Sometimes they need to make a knob for those.
Right.
Drums. Where are those knobs? I need to invent one of those.
Well, it's called an electric drum kit, but
Okay. Yeah, but we don't want to go there.
we don't want to go there. Bass.
Oh, thump. Gotta thump that bass.
Live.
Wire.
Studio.
Fun. Studio's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, studio's fun.
Mic.
Lipstick comes to mind.
And the most important one. Pizza.
Oh my goodness. Pizza. Well, I have to come back east to have a pizza. I haven't been back east, and I need to have some East Coast pizza. That's what comes to mind.
Yeah. East Coast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last question that I ask everybody is, if you could go back in time to your 15-year-old self, knowing what you know now, what would you tell her?
Everything's gonna be all right. Keep trucking.
That's great. That's great. Well, do you have anything else that you want to add?
I just want to say thank you for having me on here. This was lovely. I appreciate
thank
it
you.
very much. Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time to be on. We'll have the links to your new music and the new record once it's out, right? Because it's not out yet.
No. Oops,
Okay.
I almost turned you. Oh no! Wait, I think I turned you off. I almost turned you off.
I still see you.
Okay, I took this. I want to take a little screenshot.
Oh, a screenshot.
Okay. Yay! I took a couple because I felt like I looked geeky. All right.
I can take them on my end and send them to you.
Okay. All right. That was fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. Yeah, we'll have the links to your social media in the description box below if you guys are on YouTube, or to the sides if it's Spotify and iTunes.
Okay.
This is the Jason Damico Show. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.
Gracias. Adios.